The station shuddered as another explosion rocked its outer hull. The emergency lights cast an eerie red glow across the command center, where I stood, fists clenched, watching as the tactical display showed yet another section of Orbitus 9 falling to the invaders. "Lieutenant Dao," a voice called from behind me. I turned to see Sergeant Fan Thuan, his usually pristine engineer's uniform, now covered in soot and hydraulic fluid. "They've cut through the secondary barricade. EMP knocked out everything with a power signature. Our plasma rifles are just expensive paperweights now." I nodded grimly. Of course they had. The Zikron were nothing if not thorough when it came to disabling advanced technology. As metallic humanoids with integrated weapon systems, they considered themselves the pinnacle of evolution, the perfect fusion of organic cunning and mechanical precision. And here we were, the humans of Titan Earth Rapid Response, relegated to guard duty on a backwater trading post at the edge of the dynamic expanse. The Alliance never trusted us with anything more important. Why would they? In their eyes, we were primitives with quaint notions of warfare. Our weapons were considered relics, our tactics obsolete, our physical forms weak and inefficient. "What about the old-fashioned ballistics?" I asked, already knowing we had precious few. 10 rifles, 6 sidearms, maybe 100 rounds total," Fan replied, his face grim. Teresa Vu, our pilot and drone specialist, looked up from her console, her eyes reflecting the emergency lights. "The Tawari officers have locked themselves in the secure comms room. They're requesting immediate extraction. They're abandoning us, Lieutenant." I snorted. Typical. The Tawari, with their sleek exoskeletons and drone armies, had never respected human combat abilities. None of the Alliance species did. We were technicians, trainers, logistics experts, never warriors. Not in their eyes. "How many hostiles?" I asked, already formulating a plan. "At least 30, Teresa replied. "Zikron commandos led by Underboss Zortrak. They're after the weapons shipment in Bay 4. I took a deep breath. 30 Zikron commandos against 3 humans with minimal ballistic weapons. The math wasn't in our favor. But they didn't know what humans could do without their toys. "Fan, get every combustible liquid you can find and make us some Molotovs. Teresa, is there any way to get your Golden Leech drones operational even with the EMP?" A smile slowly spread across Teresa's face. "I might be able to shield 1 or 2 with the old lead-lined cases from engineering." "Do it. We're going to give these metal bastards a lesson in how humans fight." Sergeant Fan looked at me skeptically. "Sir, with all due respect, we're outgunned, out-armored, and outmanned." I clapped him on the shoulder. "But we're not outthought, Fan, and we're definitely not outfought. They've spent centuries relying on targeting systems and plasma weapons. But humans?" I grinned, feeling the familiar burn of adrenaline. "We've spent millennia perfecting the art of killing each other with our bare hands." I pulled up the station schematics on the manual backup display. And it's time the Alliance learned just how dangerous that makes us. Little did I know that in the next 12 hours, the dynamic expanse would learn exactly why you should never back humans into a corner. After all, when technology fails, we don't surrender. We improvise. The first Zikron patrol found us in the maintenance corridor leading to Docking Bay 3. They thought they had us cornered, 3 humans with outdated weaponry against 4 Zikron warriors in powered armor with integrated plasma rifles. Their mistake. I signaled Teresa and Fan to take position behind the support beams. The lead Zikron, a 7-foot metallic humanoid with pulsing blue energy lines running across its chest plate, raised its arm-mounted cannon. "Surrender, humans." It droned in the mechanical approximation of speech they used when addressing lesser species. "Resistance is—" I didn't let it finish that tired cliché. Instead, I hurled the first of Fan's improvised Molotovs directly at its faceplate. The bottle shattered, dousing the Zikron in flaming alcohol. Its targeting systems, designed to track energy signatures and heat patterns, were suddenly overwhelmed by the conflagration. "Now!" I shouted. Teresa and Fan opened fire with our limited ballistic weapons. The bullets, primitive by Alliance standards, weren't designed to penetrate Zekron armor. But they didn't need to. The impacts staggered the disoriented soldiers, buying me the seconds I needed. I sprinted forward, sliding beneath the wild plasma shot of the burning Zekron. A lifetime of combat training took over. My body moved on muscle memory, honed through thousands of hours of practice. The Zekron relied on their armor's strength and their integrated weapons. They weren't prepared for a human fighting at kissing distance. They weren't prepared for me. I slammed into the lead Zekron's legs with a sweep, exploiting the weakness in their knee joints. As it toppled, I was already moving to the second, ducking under its plasma shot and driving my combat knife into the flexible armor seal at its neck joint. "Their weak points are the joint seals," I shouted to my team as I twisted the knife, severing crucial hydraulic lines. Blue fluid spurted from the wound as the Zekron soldier collapsed. The third tried to recalibrate its targeting system, but Teresa's well-placed shot hit its optical sensor, blinded and confused. It didn't notice me until I had already leapt onto its back, fingers finding the manual release for its helmet. A design flaw we'd identified months ago, but no one in the Alliance had bothered to fix. Why would they? No one would be crazy enough to get close enough to a Zekron to exploit it. No one except a human. The helmet hissed open, and I jammed my last Molotov inside before kicking away. The Zekron's scream was cut short as the flames consumed its organic components. The fourth had Fan pinned down, firing methodically at his position. The sergeant was running out of cover as each plasma bolt vaporized another chunk of the bulkhead. I grabbed a fallen Zekron's arm cannon, ripped it free with a strength born of desperation, and charged. The weapon was still connected to its power source, and I managed one wild shot that caught the final Zekron in its back armor, staggering it long enough for Fan to roll clear and Teresa to empty her sidearm into its faceplate. Silence fell, broken only by our heavy breathing and the crackle of flames consuming the Zekron bodies. "Holy shit," Fan whispered, staring at the carnage we'd created in less than a minute. They never even—" "That's 4 down," I said, retrieving my knife and wiping Zekron fluid on my pants. 26 to go, and now they'll be expecting us. Teresa was already scavenging, pulling components from the fallen Zekron. "I might be able to use these power cells for the drones." "Do it," I said. "Fan, see if you can bypass their comms. I want to hear what they're saying." "Already on it, Lieutenant," Fan replied, fingers dancing across his portable terminal as he connected it to a Zekron helmet. I knelt beside one of the fallen enemies, studying its armor configuration. The Zekron were formidable foes, their bodies enhanced with metallurgical implants and cybernetic upgrades. But they had a fatal flaw. They believed too much in their technological superiority. They'd forgotten the fundamentals of close-quarters combat. Humans never had that luxury. Fan suddenly tensed. "I've got their comms. Underboss Zortrak is... He's executing the patrol leader for failing to report in." "Good," I said grimly. "Fear makes commanders stupid. Let's use that." "Lieutenant," Teresa called, her voice tight. "Long-range scanners are picking up a new signature. It's big. Really big." "Reinforcements?" She shook her head, face pale. "Worse. It's the Overlord's personal transport. Karnzar himself is coming to Orbitus 9. The name sent a chill down my spine. Overlord Karnzar was the most feared Zekron commander in the sector, known for his ruthlessness and the advanced cybernetic berserker he controlled in combat. "How long do we have?" I asked. 2 hours, maybe less. I took a deep breath, considering our options. They were, admittedly, few. "All right, change of plans. We're not just defending anymore. We're taking the fight to them." Fan looked at me like I'd lost my mind. There are still at least 26 Zekron between us and Zortrak. And now Karnjar is coming. I smiled, though there was no humor in it. Then we better hurry. Teresa was studying my face. You have a plan, don't you? Not a plan. Just a very human approach to an impossible situation. I gathered them close. Fan, what's the Zekron's biggest tactical weakness? He thought for a moment. They rely too heavily on synchronized attacks and formations. Their combat algorithms are efficient, but predictable. Exactly. And what's humanity's greatest strength? Teresa grinned slowly. Chaos. Unpredictability. Bingo! I pointed to the station schematic. They expect us to defend key positions or make a run for the escape pods. So instead, we're going to attack. Specifically, we're going to hit their command post in Bay 4. That's suicide, Fan protested. No, that's human, I corrected. We're going to fight like humans. Dirty, desperate, and with absolutely no regard for the conventional rules of engagement. I outlined my plan quickly. It was reckless, borderline insane, and violated at least a dozen Alliance combat protocols. It was also our only chance. Any questions? I asked when I'd finished. Teresa and Fan exchanged glances. Just one, Teresa said finally. When do we start? I checked the charge on my scavenged Zekron sidearm. Right now. The next hour was a blur of movement, improvisation, and the kind of close-quarters combat that humans had spent millennia perfecting. We split up, each taking different routes through the station's maintenance tunnels and ventilation shafts. Passages too small for the Zekron's bulky frames, but perfect for agile humans. I moved silently through the darkness, using the station's environmental controls to my advantage. The Zekron's thermal vision was excellent, but it could be fooled. I cranked up the ambient temperature in sections I wanted to move through, creating a uniform heat signature that masked my body's warmth. The first Zekron I encountered was alone, guarding a junction. I struck from above, dropping from a maintenance hatch directly onto its shoulders. Before it could react, I jammed my combat knife into the seam between its helmet and neckplate, twisting with all my strength. The blade found the cluster of neural connectors at the base of its skull, and the Zekron collapsed without a sound. 5 down, 25 to go. I moved on, following the plan. Teresa was using her modified drone to create distractions, drawing Zekron patrols away from their assigned routes. Fan was working his way to the Environmental Control Center, where he could give us an even greater advantage. 2 more Zekron fell to my blade and improvised weapons before I reached my first objective, the station's armory. Not for the weapons. Those would be useless against the EMP, but for what lay beneath it. The maintenance access to the station's central fuel lines. I placed the last of our Molotovs strategically, setting timers that would trigger them in sequence. Not to damage the station, we weren't there yet, but to create a series of cascading fires that would trigger the emergency protocols and flood certain sections with fire-suppressant foam. Foam that would coat the Zekron's optical sensors and clog their joint mechanisms. As I finished setting the last timer, my comm crackled. "Lieutenant!" It was Fan, his voice tight with pain. "I'm pinned down in Section C. 3 Zekron. I took one out, but they've got me cornered. I'm hit." My heart sank. Section C was on the opposite side of the station. Even if I ran, I'd never make it in time. "Teresa?" I called. "Already moving," her voice came back, breathless. "But I'm 4 minutes out at best." "Hold on, Fan," I said, already sprinting toward the nearest junction. "We're coming!" "Don't," he gasped. "Stick to the plan. I've planted the override codes for the environmental systems. Access panel Alpha 7. Password is Earth Prevails." I could hear plasma fire through the comm, the sound of Fan returning fire with his sidearm. "Fan, don't you dare—" "Been an honor, Lieutenant," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice despite the pain. "Show these metal bastards how humans fight." The comm exploded with the sound of plasma fire, then went silent. I slowed to a stop, leaning against the bulkhead, grief and rage warring within me. Fan had been with me since the academy. He was the best engineer I'd ever known, capable of fixing anything with little more than duct tape and determination. And now he was gone. "Teresa," I said, my voice hollow. "Change of plans. Head to environmental control. Use Fan's codes." "But Fan is buying us time." I cut her off, unable to say the words. "Don't waste it." I took a deep breath, pushing the grief down, transforming it into cold fury. 7 Zekron down, 23 to go, and then Zortrak, and then, if necessary, Karnjar himself. The first timer triggered, and distant alarms began to wail as fires erupted throughout the lower decks. Phase 1 complete. I had just reached the main corridor leading to Bay 4 when Teresa's voice came through my comm again. "I'm in environmental control. Fan's codes worked. What do you need?" "Gravity fluctuations in sections D through F," I said, checking my position. "Drop it to 0.2 G for 30 seconds, then spike it to 2 G. "That's going to affect you too," she warned. "I'm counting on it," I replied. "On my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." I was already running when the gravity plummeted. Each step sent me flying meters down the corridor, moving faster than any Zekron could track. I spotted a patrol ahead. 3 of them, weapons raised. They fired, but their targeting systems were calibrated for normal gravity. The plasma bolts sailed harmlessly overhead as I skimmed just above the floor. I hit the first Zekron low, using my momentum to sweep its legs. As it toppled in the low gravity, I planted my feet on its chest and pushed off, launching myself at the second. My knife found the weak point at its throat, slicing through hydraulic lines and neural connectors. The third managed to swing its weapon toward me, but I was already moving, using the walls and ceiling as springboards in the reduced gravity. "Spike it now!" I shouted into the comm. The gravity suddenly doubled, and I was ready, absorbing the impact with bent knees, while the Zekron patrol crashed to the floor, momentarily immobilized by the sudden shift. I moved without hesitation, finishing the first 2 with quick thrusts to vulnerable joint seals, then grappling with the third. It was stronger, its metallically enhanced muscles designed for combat. But I had position and leverage, the fundamentals of human martial arts that had remained unchanged for thousands of years. I locked its arm, hyperextending the elbow joint until the internal mechanism snapped, then drove my knife up through the bottom of its helmet. 10 down, 20 to go. "Next corridor, same protocol," I gasped into the comm. "On my mark." We repeated the process twice more, the gravity fluctuations disorienting the Zekron while I used them to my advantage, moving in 3 dimensions, attacking from unexpected angles. Human adaptability against machine precision. By the time I reached the approach to Bay 4, I'd personally eliminated 15 Zekron soldiers. Teresa had taken out another 3 using her drones as mobile bombs. 18 down, 12 to go. But I was running out of tricks, and my body was beginning to fail. A plasma graze had seared my left arm, and I'd taken a blow to the ribs that made each breath a lesson in agony. I needed to end this soon. "Teresa, status on Karnjar's ship?" 15 minutes out, she replied. "Lieutenant, I have an idea, but you're not going to like it." At this point, I'm open to suggestions. The Golden Leech drones. I've modified the last 2 with the power cells from the Zekron weapons. If I overload them near the Bay 4 entrance, it should create an EMP pulse, powerful enough to disable any Zekron within 20 meters. That would fry all our comms too, I pointed out. "Yes," she agreed. "And probably damage the station systems in that section permanently. But it would give you a clear shot at Zortrak." I considered it for a moment. "Do it. Meet me at Junction 17 after—" "On my way." I heard Teresa's breathing change as she started running. Then a sound that made my blood freeze, plasma fire, and a cry of pain. "Teresa!" 5. "Zekron," she gasped. "Fuel storage section. They were waiting." I was already running, changing direction to head toward her position. Hold on! No. Her voice was fainter now. Drones are set. Timer. 30 seconds. Get to Bay 4, Lieutenant. I'm not leaving you! That's an order, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice despite the pain. Just like Fan. Someone has to show these aliens how humans fight. More plasma fire and then silence. I stopped, leaning against the wall, breath coming in ragged gasps. Teresa and Fan, both gone, both sacrificing themselves for the mission. For me. The distant thump of an explosion shook the station, followed by the distinctive electronic whine of systems failing as the EMP from Teresa's drones radiated outward. 20 seconds to reach Bay 4 before the Zekron recovered. I ran. The scene in Bay 4 was chaos. The Zekron guards nearest the entrance were immobilized, their systems temporarily scrambled by Teresa's improvised EMP. Further in, others were recovering, movements jerky as their cybernetics rebooted. And in the center, standing before the captured Alliance weapons cache, was Underboss Zortrak. He was larger than the others, his armor more elaborate, with pulsing red energy lines instead of blue. A ceremonial cape of metallic mesh hung from his shoulders, and his helmet was adorned with spikes, a throwback to the Zekron's pre-technological warrior culture. The human, he said, his voice deeper and more resonant than his soldiers. You've caused quite the disruption to my operation. I'm just getting started, I replied, moving slowly into the bay, keeping my distance for now. I needed to catch my breath, assess the situation. 5 Zekron were still operational, plus Zortrak himself, and I had no idea how many more might be hidden among the cargo containers. Impressive for a primitive, Zortrak acknowledged. 20 of my soldiers eliminated by 3 humans with minimal technology. The Overlord will be displeased. He can take it up with me personally, I said, still circling. If you're still alive to tell him. Zortrak made a sound that might have been laughter. Your confidence is misplaced. You've merely delayed the inevitable. This station will fall. The Alliance will collapse. And humanity will assume its proper place as subjects of the Zekron Empire. I don't think so, I replied. See, there's something you Zekron have never understood about humans. And what might that be? I smiled, though there was no humor in it. We don't like being told what we can't do. I moved then, faster than he expected, diving behind a stack of cargo containers as Zortrak and his guards opened fire. Plasma bolts superheated the air where I'd stood a moment before. Find him, Zortrak ordered. Spread out! Exactly as I'd hoped. Divide and conquer, one of humanity's oldest tactics. I waited in the shadows as the first Zekron soldier moved past my position, then struck. My combat knife found the gap in its back armor, sliding between metallic vertebrae to sever the main power conduit. The Zekron collapsed, systems failing. 1 down, 5 to go. I moved silently to a new position, using the cargo containers for cover. The bay was dimly lit now, emergency power only, creating deep shadows that the Zekron's optical sensors struggled to penetrate. The second guard moved too close to a narrow gap between containers. I reached out, grabbed its arm, and pulled, off balance. It stumbled into the gap where I was waiting. A quick thrust to the neck seal, and it joined its comrade in permanent shutdown. 2 down, 4 to go. The third and fourth were moving together, covering each other's blind spots. Smart, but they weren't looking up. I climbed the container stack silently, positioning myself above them. When they passed beneath me, I dropped, landing on the shoulders of one and driving my knife into its neural cluster before pushing off, rolling as I hit the ground and coming up behind the second. Before it could turn, I disabled it with a thrust to the lower back, where the armor thinned to allow for mobility. 4 down, 2 to go. Just Zortrak and 1 more guard. I was breathing hard now, muscles screaming in protest. The adrenaline that had carried me this far was fading, and the pain from my injuries was becoming harder to ignore. Impressive, Zortrak's voice echoed through the bay. But futile. Even if you eliminate me, the Overlord will arrive soon, and he brings with him the Berserker. I didn't respond, conserving my energy as I crept closer to his position. The last guard was standing directly beside Zortrak now, both of them scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. I needed a distraction. My hand closed around a small metal component I'd scavenged from a fallen Zekron. A power cell regulator. I tossed it far to my right, where it clattered loudly against a container. The guard turned, weapon raised, firing a burst of plasma at the sound. Zortrak, more disciplined, kept his attention forward. But his focus had narrowed. Attention split between watching for me and monitoring his guard. It was the opening I needed. I charged, not at Zortrak, but at the stack of containers beside him, using a technique that had originated with parkour enthusiasts on Earth centuries ago. I ran up the vertical surface, momentum, carrying me high enough to grab the edge and pull myself up. From there, I leaped, body twisting in midair, to bring my full weight down on the guard, knife leading. The blade found its mark between helmet and shoulder armor, and the guard collapsed beneath me. 5 down, 1 to go. But I'd sacrificed stealth for speed. And Zortrak was ready. His plasma cannon tracked my movement, firing, as I rolled away from the fallen guard. Heat seared across my back as the bolt grazed me, igniting my uniform and burning flesh beneath. I smothered the flames by rolling, coming up to face him, knife in hand. Brave, Zortrak acknowledged, but foolish. He fired again, but I was already moving, zigzagging between containers. Zekron targeting systems were precise, but struggled with chaotic movement patterns. Another weakness we'd identified, but the Alliance had dismissed as irrelevant. I closed the distance, ducking under another plasma bolt that melted a hole through the container behind me. Then, I was inside his firing arc, too close for the cannon to track effectively. Zortrak swung the weapon like a club, using its mass as a bludgeon. I ducked, feeling the wind of its passage, then drove upward with my knife. But he anticipated the move, catching my wrist with his free hand. His grip was like iron, cybernetically enhanced muscles crushing my bones. I gasped in pain, but didn't drop the knife. Your primitive combat skills are impressive, Zortrak said, slowly forcing my arm down. But ultimately meaningless against superior technology. I smiled through the pain. That's the problem with you, Zekron. You think technology is everything. With my free hand, I reached up and pressed the manual release for his helmet, the same design flaw I'd exploited earlier. Zortrak realized his mistake too late. The helmet hissed open, revealing the partially metallic face beneath. Before he could react, I headbutted him, driving my forehead into his exposed face. Pain exploded across my skull, but I felt the satisfying crunch of his nasal apparatus giving way. Zortrak stumbled back, releasing my wrist. I followed, not giving him time to recover, driving my knife into the now exposed neck seal. Blue fluid spurted as the blade found critical components. The underboss fell to his knees, systems failing, but managed one final act of defiance. His hand closed around my ankle, cybernetic strength crushing bone. I cried out, falling as my leg gave way beneath me. We collapsed together, the Zekron commander's systems shutting down, even as his grip maintained its posthumous strength. I lay there, breathing hard, pain radiating from my crushed ankle, burned back, and the dozen other injuries I'd accumulated. But I'd done it. All 25 Zekron soldiers eliminated, plus underboss Zortrak himself. A moment of silence fell over Bay 4, broken only by the distant alarms and my labored breathing. Then a new sound, the distinctive rumble of docking clamps engaging. A ship was arriving at the station. Karnjar, the Overlord himself. And I was in no condition to face him, let alone his infamous berserker. I forced myself to move, prying Zortrak's dead fingers from my ankle. The pain was excruciating, but I'd endured worse during Special Forces training. Mind over matter, another human specialty. I needed a plan, fast. The holographic display at Zortrak's command console was still active, showing the station layout and the approaching Zekron vessel. Karn's chariot. The Overlord's personal transport. It would dock at the primary bay, 2 sections over. I dragged myself to the console, leaving a trail of blood, and studied the display. An idea began to form, a desperate, last-ditch strategy that violated every combat protocol in the Alliance handbook. In other words, a human plan. I accessed the station's communication system through Zortrak's command codes, opening a channel to the approaching ship. "Overlord Karnjar," I said, my voice steady despite the pain. "This is Lieutenant Lam Doutham of the Titan Earth Rapid Response Unit." There was a moment of silence. Then a response. A deep, resonant voice that seemed to vibrate with barely contained power. "The human warrior," Karnjar replied. "Your reputation precedes you. 26 of my soldiers eliminated by a single primitive. Impressive." 23, I corrected. My teammates accounted for 3 before they fell. "Ah, yes. The engineer and the pilot. Their sacrifices were noted." I felt a fresh surge of rage at his dismissive tone. "I'm giving you one chance, Overlord. Withdraw your forces. Leave the station, and I'll allow you to depart with your dignity intact." Karnjar's laughter boomed through the speakers. "You are in no position to make demands, human. My ship docks in 5 minutes. My berserker will find you, and it will tear you apart, limb by limb. Your primitive combat skills are no match for my creation." I smiled grimly. "We'll see about that. Humans have a saying, Overlord. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." Meaningless mammalian metaphors. Karnjar dismissed. "Prepare yourself for the end. Lieutenant Doutham, it will not be painless." The communication cut off. 5 minutes. I had 5 minutes to prepare for the most dangerous opponent I'd ever faced. Time to show the Zekron how a human really fights. I'm not going to lie, what happened next was mostly pain, blood, and the kind of desperate improvisation that humans excel at when backed into a corner. I managed to drag myself to a maintenance shaft, using my belt as a makeshift tourniquet for my leg. The station's layout was complex, but I knew it better than the Zekron. I'd spent months memorizing every duct, shaft, and access panel, while the Alliance officers dismissed it as unnecessary diligence. I heard Karnjar's ship dock, the clamps engaging with a thunderous sound that resonated through the station's superstructure. Then, silence, more unnerving than any alarm. I'd positioned myself in a maintenance junction where 3 corridors met, giving me multiple escape routes. The pain from my injuries had faded to a dull throb, pushed aside by the cool clarity of combat focus. Then, I heard it, the rhythmic thud of heavy footsteps. Not the standard Zekron gait, but something heavier, more deliberate. The berserker. It appeared at the far end of the corridor, and my blood ran cold. The stories hadn't done it justice. The berserker stood nearly 3 meters tall. Its frame, a nightmare fusion of Zekron technology and organic components. Unlike the standard Zekron soldiers, it had been designed specifically for close quarters combat, with reinforced limbs ending in wickedly curved blades. Its helmet was featureless except for a single, red optical sensor that swept the corridor methodically. Behind it walked Overlord Karnjar himself, his armor more elaborate than Zortrak's, with pulsing gold energy lines signifying his rank. A cape of woven metal hung from his shoulders, and his helmet bore a crown of spikes. "I know you're here, human." Karnjar's amplified voice echoed through the junction. "My berserker can smell your blood." As if on cue, the monstrous creation tilted its head, the optical sensor fixing on my hiding spot with unsettling precision. I had hoped for more time to prepare, but apparently, that wasn't in the cards. Time for Plan B. Impressive toy, I called out, shifting position to keep the maintenance shaft entrance within diving distance. Compensating for something? The berserker took a step forward, but Karnjar held up a hand, stopping it. Amusing to the end. Your species' reliance on humor in the face of death is a fascinating psychological quirk. Perhaps we'll study it more closely once we've subjugated your homeworld. You're welcome to try, I replied, edging closer to the shaft entrance. But you'll find Earth isn't as easy to conquer as you think. We've been killing each other for millennia. We're really, really good at it. A primitive boast from a primitive species, Karnjar dismissed. Your martial skills are impressive for an unaugmented being, but the berserker represents the pinnacle of Zekron combat engineering. It cannot be defeated by flesh and bone. Maybe not, I acknowledged. But that's the thing about humans. Overlord. We don't fight fair. We fight to win. I triggered the detonator in my hand. The charges I'd placed throughout the junction, improvised from Zekron power cells and station fuel lines, exploded simultaneously. The floor beneath the berserker buckled, creating a momentary distraction. Not enough to damage it, but enough to throw off its balance for a critical second. I moved, ignoring the screaming pain in my ankle, diving through the maintenance shaft entrance and pulling the emergency seal lever. The reinforced door slammed shut behind me, buying me precious seconds. I crawled through the narrow shaft, moving as fast as my broken body would allow. Behind me, I heard the screech of metal as the berserker tore through the emergency door like it was paper. The shaft opened into a larger junction, exactly where I wanted to be. The station's primary hydraulic control room, where massive pistons regulated pressure throughout Orbitus 9. I pulled myself up, leaning against a control panel as the berserker's massive form filled the shaft entrance. It paused, scanning the room, its single red eye fixing on me with predatory focus. Nowhere left to run. Human. Karnjar's voice came through the berserker's external speakers. He was controlling it remotely from a safe distance. Smart. Who's running? I challenged, forcing myself to stand despite the agony in my leg. You wanted to see how humans fight, so let's fight. The berserker stepped fully into the control room, its bladed limbs flexing in anticipation. It moved with surprising grace for something so large, its movements fluid and precise, a testament to Zekron engineering and Karnjar's control. I had one advantage. I knew exactly where I was. The berserker, for all its advanced sensors, was unfamiliar with this part of the station. It charged, covering the distance between us with frightening speed. I waited until the last possible moment, then dropped, rolling beneath a hydraulic piston. The berserker's momentum carried it forward, its bladed arm slashing where I'd stood a moment before. The blade struck the piston, cutting through the outer casing and releasing a spray of pressurized hydraulic fluid. I scrambled away, putting another set of machinery between us. Impressive reflexes, Karnjar's voice commented. But you merely delay the inevitable. Actually, I replied, I'm just getting started. The berserker circled the machinery, its movements calculated to cut off my escape routes. It was learning, adapting to my tactics, another dangerous feature. I feinted left, then dove right as it lunged. This time, its blade caught my shoulder, slicing through flesh and grazing bone. I gasped in pain but kept moving, leaving a fresh trail of blood across the floor. The wound was bad, but not immediately fatal. And it brought the berserker exactly where I wanted it, directly beneath the station's main hydraulic junction. I pulled myself up using a control lever, leaving a bloody handprint on the metal. The berserker advanced more cautiously now, perhaps sensing a trap. Your movement patterns are becoming predictable. Human, Karnjar taunted. My berserker's combat algorithms have mapped your techniques. There is no escape. I don't want to escape, I replied, shifting my weight to my good leg. I want to win. The berserker lunged again, and this time I employed a technique from Earth's Muay Thai tradition, a teep kick, driving the ball of my foot directly into its center mass. The impact sent a fresh wave of agony through my broken ankle, but it had the desired effect, staggering the berserker back a crucial half-meter. Before it could recover, I threw myself at the main hydraulic control valve, using my body weight to wrench it fully open. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The pressurized fluid that regulated the station's massive systems burst from the overhead pipes with the force of a fire hose, striking the berserker squarely in its optical sensor. The creature staggered, momentarily blinded, its arms flailing as it tried to locate me through the spray. I took the opportunity to drag myself to the emergency override panel, punching in the sequence I'd memorized months ago. Warning, hydraulic pressure, critical. Emergency shutdown initiated. The remaining pistons in the room suddenly locked, their emergency protocols activating as the system detected the pressure loss. One massive piston slammed down directly onto the berserker's right arm, pinning it to the floor. It roared, an unexpectedly organic sound from such a mechanical creature, and tried to pull free. But the piston had been designed to withstand the pressures of deep space. It held. I wasn't done. Summoning the last of my strength, I launched myself at the berserker, landing on its back. My fingers found the manual override at the base of its helmet, another design flaw. This one unique to Karnjar's creation. In his arrogance, he'd never imagined anyone would get close enough to exploit it. The helmet hissed open, revealing the organic components beneath, a grotesque fusion of Zekron neural tissue and mechanical interfaces. The control center through which Karnjar piloted his creation. I didn't hesitate. My combat knife, now slick with my own blood, plunged into the exposed neural cluster, severing the connection between master and creation. The berserker convulsed, systems failing as the control signal was lost. Its free arm flailed, catching me across the chest and sending me flying into a bank of controls. I felt ribs crack, the air driven from my lungs. But the berserker was finished. Its movements became erratic, then slowed, and finally ceased altogether. The red optical sensor flickered and went dark. I lay there, breathing in shallow gasps, pain radiating from what felt like every cell in my body. But I'd done it. I'd defeated Karnjar's supposedly invincible berserker, using nothing but human ingenuity, desperation, and a fundamental understanding of close-quarters combat. A harsh laugh escaped my lips, triggering a fresh wave of pain from my broken ribs. The sound echoed through the now silent control room, mixing with the hiss of escaping hydraulic fluid. "That," I whispered to no one in particular, "is how a human fights." Then darkness claimed me. I awoke to the sterile white ceiling of the station's medical bay and the steady beep of monitoring equipment. My body felt distant, the pain held at bay by what I assumed were some impressive painkillers. "He's awake," a familiar voice said. I turned my head, a movement that required far more effort than it should have, to see Sergeant Van Thuan sitting beside my bed. He looked terrible, his face pale and drawn, his right arm ending in a bandaged stump just below the elbow. But he was alive. "You're supposed to be dead," I managed, my voice a dry rasp. Fan smiled weakly. "Rumors of my demise were greatly exaggerated, Lieutenant. The Zekron left me for dead after they shot up the environmental control room. Tuari medical team found me when they finally emerged from their safe room." "Teresa?" I asked, though I already knew the answer from the shadow that crossed Fan's face. "She didn't make it," he confirmed quietly. "Her sacrifice saved the station. The fuel storage section would have blown if she hadn't contained the fire." I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar weight of loss. Another name to add to the too long list of comrades I'd survived. "Karnjar?" I asked after a moment. "Retreated after you took down his berserker. The Alliance fleet arrived an hour later, too late for the fight, as usual." I nodded, unsurprised. The Alliance had always been reactive, rather than proactive, especially when it came to human settlements and outposts. How bad? I gestured vaguely at my body. Broken ankle, 3 cracked ribs, severe lacerations to your back and shoulder, second-degree burns over 20% of your body, and enough blood loss that the doctor said you should have died 3 times over. Fan recited the list clinically, but there was respect in his eyes. You'll live, though. Humans are apparently harder to kill than the Zekron anticipated. A new voice joined the conversation, deep, resonant, with the distinctive harmonics of a Twari. Indeed, a fact that many of us failed to appreciate until now. I turned to see Commander Zixtor, the Twari officer, who had locked himself and his staff in the secure communications room during the attack. His exoskeleton gleamed under the medical bay lights, and his faceted eyes regarded me with what appeared to be genuine respect. "Commander," I acknowledged, keeping my tone neutral. "Good of you to join us." If he detected the sarcasm, he didn't show it. "Your actions have revised many of our assumptions about human combat capabilities. Lieutenant Doutham, the Alliance Council has been briefed on your defense of Orbitus 9. Defense? I couldn't help but laugh, though it sent fresh pain through my ribs. I didn't defend anything, Commander. I hunted them down and eliminated them. There's a difference. Zixtor's mouth parts clicked, the Twari equivalent of clearing one's throat. Yes, well, the distinction has been noted, as has the effectiveness of your unorthodox methods. I raised an eyebrow. Unorthodox? You mean human? Precisely, the commander agreed. The Council has authorized the establishment of a new training facility here on Orbitus 9, a facility where Alliance soldiers can learn human combat techniques. I exchanged glances with Fan, who looked as surprised as I felt. You want us to teach Alliance troops how to fight like humans? I clarified. With you as the lead instructor, yes. Once you've recovered, of course. I considered the offer. It was unprecedented, an acknowledgement that humans had something valuable to contribute to the Alliance's military strategy, something beyond our role as technicians and logistics experts. And Sergeant Fan, I asked. Zixtor gestured to Fan's missing arm. The Council has authorized the finest cybernetic replacement available. The Sergeant's engineering expertise will be invaluable to the training program. Fan looked down at his bandaged stump, then back up with a determined expression. I'll be back in the fight, stronger than before. I nodded, a plan already forming. We'll need Teresa's drone designs incorporated into the training program. Her work saved the station as much as anything I did. Already in progress, Zixtor assured me. Her contributions will be honored. I leaned back, exhaustion pulling at me despite the brief conversation. But there was one more thing. Commander, what about Karnjar? He's still out there. Zixtor's faceted eyes shifted, the Twari equivalent of a frown. The Overlord has withdrawn to Zekron space for now, but intelligence suggests he is displeased with the outcome here. He may seek retribution. Let him come, I said, feeling the familiar burn of determination beneath the painkillers. Next time, we'll be ready. The commander nodded, then left us, his exoskeleton whirring softly as he moved. Fan waited until the door closed before speaking. So, we're going to teach the Alliance how to fight like humans. Any idea where we'll start? I smiled, though I suspect it looked more like a grimace. We start with the basics. Fan, Rule 1. When technology fails, improvise. Rule 2. Use your environment. Rule 3. Get close. Closer than they're comfortable with. And Rule 4? He prompted. Never fight fair, I said, closing my eyes as exhaustion claimed me once more. Humans fight to win. 3 months later, I stood before the assembled trainees in what had once been Bay 4, now converted into a combat training facility. My ankle had healed, mostly, though it still ached when the station's environmental system cycled. The burns on my back had scarred into a web of pink tissue, a permanent reminder of how close I'd come to death. Fan stood beside me, his new cybernetic arm gleaming under the lights. It was state-of-the-art, more advanced than anything available to human military personnel. The Alliance had spared no expense, a testament to their newfound respect for humanity's potential contribution. The trainees represented a dozen Alliance species: Tuari, with their exoskeletons; Volatran, with their shifting biomass; Zeli Ara, with their crystalline structures. All of them warriors in their own right, but all of them dependent on their advanced technology. None of them knew how to truly fight. Not yet. "Welcome to Human Combat Fundamentals," I began, pacing before them. "You're here because the Alliance has finally recognized something humans have known for millennia. Technology fails, weapons jam, systems crash. And when that happens, what do you have left?" I paused, looking at each trainee in turn. "Yourselves," I continued. "Your bodies, your minds, your will to survive. That's what this program is about. Teaching you to fight like humans, dirty, desperate, and with absolutely no regard for the conventional rules of engagement." A Tuari officer raised a limb, the equivalent of a raised hand. "Lieutenant, with respect, many of our species lack the physical attributes that make humans effective close-quarters combatants. How can we apply your techniques?" I nodded, having anticipated the question. "Good point. You won't all fight exactly like humans, but you'll learn to think like humans, to improvise, to use your environment, to exploit weaknesses, to get closer than your enemy expects or wants." I gestured to Fan, who activated a holographic display showing the station schematics. "This is where we start," I said. "Understanding your environment, every duct, shaft, and access panel, every potential weapon, every escape route. In human combat philosophy, everything is a potential advantage." As I continued the lesson, I caught Fan's eye. He gave me a subtle nod of approval. We both knew what we were really doing here, preparing the Alliance for the return of Karnjar, and for the larger conflict that surely loomed on the horizon. The ceremony the previous day had been somber and proud. The dedication of the Teresa Vu Memorial Combat Drone Laboratory, where her innovations would continue to save lives. Her sacrifice, like the sacrifices of so many human soldiers throughout history, would not be forgotten. I turned my attention back to the trainees, noting their mix of skepticism and curiosity. They had a long way to go, but they had potential, all of them. "All right," I said, clapping my hands together. "Pair up. Today, we learn how to fight when everything goes wrong. Today, we learn how to fight like humans." As the trainees moved to comply, my comm unit buzzed with an urgent alert. I checked the display, feeling a chill run down my spine despite the controlled temperature of the station. "Problem?" Fan asked, noticing my expression. "Unidentified vessel approaching Orbitus 9, I replied quietly. "Pattern matches Vong Lian design." Fan's eyes widened slightly. The Vong Lian were a newly encountered species on the edge of Alliance space. Their intentions still unknown, but rumored to be hostile. "Should we postpone the training?" he asked. I considered it for a moment, then shook my head, a grim smile forming. "On the contrary, Sergeant, I think we're about to give our trainees a practical demonstration." I turned back to the assembled warriors, raising my voice. "Change of plans, people. We may have visitors soon. Time to show them how humans fight." A new chapter was beginning, and whatever came next, humanity would be ready. After all, we'd been preparing for this moment for thousands of years. We just hadn't known it.